Time has now run out for U.S. lawmakers to agree on federal funding, which means the government has now officially shut down. And the Democratic-led Senate rejected the temporary bills by House Republicans that would have delayed Obama's health care law as the price to continue funding. Obama warned the shutdown will have a very real economic impact on everyday people. As RT's Liz Wild's been finding out, it won't exactly be a total disaster.
Some federal offices will shut down, federal employees furloughed. Federal air traffic controllers will remain working, so will the majority of the Department of Homeland Security. Everything from the U.S. Coast Guard to the Transportation Security Agency will keep operating. Federal prisons will stay open. The State Department will keep processing passports, but there may be delays. Social Security and Medicare payments would keep coming. Food stamp benefits will be available, but many other services under the SNAP program that help needy mothers and children would be suspended. The U.S. Postal Service would remain in business. Federal courts are exempt, so court will remain in session, at least until mid-October. But if the government stays shut down longer than 10 days, judiciary jobs would be at risk for furlough. Active duty military is considered essential, so men and women in uniform will stay at work. But if likely paychecks will be delayed. That's because even though the military is considered critical, about half of the Department of Defense is not. On the chopping block, NASA. Most of its employees would be furloughed. A few workers would remain on the job to man mission control. The Food and Drug Administration would suspend most safety inspections. Perhaps taking the biggest hit, tourism. National parks across the country will close. So will museums here in Washington, D.C. That includes the Smithsonian Museum and the National Zoo. The 24-hour Panda Cam would go dark. Ultimately, it is up to the executive branch to decide who is essential and who is not. Right now, it looks like roughly 800,000 federal workers, many of them here in Washington, would temporarily be out of work in the first government shutdown in nearly 2 decades. In Washington, Liz Wall, RT.
Now, last-minute decisions on the verge of a shutdown have recently become fairly common in Washington. Let's flash back to a couple of the closest calls in recent years for you here on RT. Let's go back to 2011. The closing of the government was averted just 1 hour before the deadline. After a painful legislative standoff, the budget deal was finally agreed upon. Now, the debt ceiling, another nerve-wracking issue, the summer of 2011, it was sending shockwaves across America and the wider world. Though the sky didn't fall, as it was agreed upon just 2 days before the time was up. And political commentator Brian Fox, he told my colleague Matt Trezor that Washington is, well, quite used to playing deadline games.
Enough now that I can look back and see the same sort of political opportunism and grandstanding every time with different variations. And the main variation being who's in power, who's in the White House. Is it political puppet number 1 from the Republicans, or is it political puppet number 2 from the Democrats? And those are the variables other than who also controls Congress. So that's the stage that's set for this grand theater.
Why, though, this drama, this theater?
Political opportunism is the game of the town, Washington, D.C. They both have the same basic platform. They're all on board for endless war. They're all on board for endless spending, one for corporate welfare, one for social welfare. They're all on board for surveillance state. They're all on board for the police state. We're on board for the big things because it's all about a crisis, a deal in crisis, where a lot of deals are exchanged.